All right, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Raw Knowledge Podcast with your host, as ever, myself, Alex Connor. And we're back today with another guest in a fantastic facility and studio, as you can probably hear and see. And I'm with Brad Sheppard. Brad, thanks for joining me.
Pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure, my friend. I must admit, like I'm on the Joe Rogan podcast at the minute.
You're loving the sounds, aren't you?
I tell you what, I'm like a kid in a candy shop right now. This audio is absolutely phenomenal. As always, to set the scene, let's start with who you are, what you do, and more importantly, why you do it.
Yeah, thanks, mate, and pleasure to be invited on here. Right now, I run a company called Trainer HQ. I run that with my business partner, Jason Ubanowicz. We've been in the fitness industry for well over 25 years, and we've run this business for the last 14 years. And what we're all about is assisting trainers, coaches to build a more profitable, more successful business, stop spinning their wheels, and be able to get more freedom and more out of what they want out of the industry.
Oh, fantastic. And we're going to sort of dive more into the specifics of that as we go. But before we do, let's perhaps take a trip down memory lane to give a bit of context. And let's look at the younger Brad and where you started and perhaps your initial beliefs and what led you to where you are today. And we can be as detailed as we like.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I guess from my perspective, I kicked off many, many years ago when I was 12 years old was when I actually got my first barbell set. And I grew up in the western suburbs of Sydney. I was playing rugby league, got the barbell set because I wanted to put on some muscle at the age of 12. And really at that point in time, I didn't really know that was going to lead me on a lifetime journey of pumping iron, lifting weights, the fitness industry, all the rest of it. I turned 47 this year. So definitely been a long journey now through that start by the age of 15 when I was in grade 10 at high school. I was competing in my first bodybuilding competition. So, whilst the other kids were out there, riding skateboards in the afternoon and eating meat pies for lunch, I was eating tuna and rice every day and hit the gym every afternoon. So what that built in me was a love affair with the fitness industry, with training, with exercising. And, I remember from a young age, my teenage years, designing exercise programs, diets, all the rest of it for friends and family members. And it just seemed like a bit of a natural progression for me to start to move into the fitness industry. So by the age of 17, I started placing at national bodybuilding championships. And then at the age of 21, I was fortunate enough to win the then junior Mr. Australia bodybuilding championship. And so at the age of 21, 1995, as the newly crowned junior national bodybuilding champion, the obvious thing seemed to me back then was to go and commence my business as a personal trainer. So that was pretty much sort of like the introduction to the fitness industry for me.
Yeah. I resonate with the tuna and building out programs.
It's pretty much the staple. The bodybuilders have kept the tuna industry afloat. Pun intended.
Now this is definitely true, my friend. There's a lot of things we probably did back then, and we go, oh, maybe it wasn't quite the best thing, but nonetheless, it was interesting.
I did have a colleague of mine actually, but he didn't like eating tuna, but he realised that tuna was critical as a bodybuilder, right? And this is back in the days before protein powder used to taste terrible. Back in the day, the first protein powder was egg white albumin was stuff we used to have, and it was
my dad will be nodding along now.
Well, he used to put the tuna inside the protein drink and put it in the blender and churn it up, and then just guzzle it down because he thought I got to eat the tuna, So
there was a bit of a badge of honor, I think, which still remains in the hardcore industry. Like, no, you eat the bland food.
Yeah.
I also remember just eating a bag of salad when I was trying to get shredded because I thought, if you eat the greens, you just get the leans. But
absolutely,
not the case. Brad, tell us perhaps maybe the protagonist that sort of led you to maybe furthering your education, or maybe to re sort of phrase that. One of the main roadblocks that you first hit when you started in the industry, that you were like, you know what, maybe this is not what I thought. And maybe there's more to this, and then how that sort of led you on to furthering your knowledge.
Yeah, 100%. So, as the newly crowned, junior champion, got the ripped muscles, all the rest of it, I thought I'm going to kill it in this business, of course. And back then, 1995, personal training in Australia was still, in some ways you might say, in its infancy, was in its early days, and it was somewhat seen as a bit of an elitist thing. That's what people do in Hollywood and all the rest of it. And when I kicked off, I really struggled. So at the beginning, I had no strategy. I had no idea about business. I had no idea on how to attain clients. I didn't understand marketing or lead generation. And when I was fortunate enough, and I guess lucky enough to get someone in front of me, I had no process on how to start somebody, sign them up. I was discounting. I'd do whatever it took to sign somebody up. So, although I was really pumped about, being able to help and assist people, I just had no business knowledge and no business acumen. And so when I look back, really, I spent around about the first 5 years in the industry. And I refer to it back in those days as very much a roller coaster journey because, like I said, I struggled in the beginning to get clients and slowly but surely I got my first client and that led on to my second person and they probably referred my third person. And obviously I was doing a good job because these people kept coming back. And over that 5 or so years, what I noticed is that there'll be some times on that roller coaster journey where things were going pretty good. I'd have a bunch of clients on board and then for no particular reason, I'd have 1, 2 or 3 people finish up. And that would present for me a very stressful situation because that meant an immediate drop in income and revenue. More importantly, a battering on my own sort of personal view on what I'm doing. Hey, am I in the right space? Can I actually make a go of this? Am I any good? All those questions would start popping up. And so those first 5 years, I'd say, were very challenging because although I knew that I was doing something that I loved, what happened is the amount of income or revenue that I was bringing in just didn't match up to that. And I questioned many times over that stage, and I was in my early 20s then, is this for me? Can I actually make a go of it? In this industry that I love so much, and from the age of 12, I'd fallen in love with every single aspect of it, so very challenging.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of things I think are going to resonate with a lot of the listeners there, especially even myself. You question yourself, you have these ebbs and flows where you're going great, you think I've got this, I'm all over it, and then all of a sudden it just takes a few clients or a couple of adversities to make you question,
yes.
Have you got the minerals, for a lack of better words? Yeah. And I think it is normal, and I think it's good for people to listen to that from someone who is now a lot more established with a lot more knowledge, because it is part and parcel of the journey and the course. Something that I'd like to dive into and dissect more is you did a talk the other day at EMF, right? Which is where we met,
Yep.
and you went over a few of these sort of key points, if you will, and things that we'll go into today in much more detail. And one of the things you said, you mentioned a book, Resources, right? Mm-hmm. And 7 Highly Effective Habits of the Most Successful People. I butchered the name, you know what I'm talking about. But ultimately, what I want to talk about is, were there any initial mentors or books, aside from that one, that helped you actually iron out these systems and processes to a point where you were able to maintain more consistency with your income? And perhaps that's part of a bigger question, which we'll get into, but actually getting to that point where, whether it was 5 years or 10 years, and now you've got this, okay, this is how I need to run it to ensure I'm bringing in this 6 figures, etc., or whatever it was every month, however you want to break it down. Yeah,
100%. And you're exactly right. The book reference to is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Author's name, the late, great Stephen Covey. And once again, I reflect back on that book. What actually happened was, when I first kicked off as a personal trainer, somebody that I knew and respected, they actually gave me a copy of the book. They said, "Hey, Brad, you look like a pretty young, motivated sort of fellow, and you're embarking on this personal training thing. Here's a book I think you should read." And I was like, "Thanks." Someone gives you a book for free. And, with all good intentions, I thought, I'm going to hook into that book. I'm going to read it. And, of course, I took it home and put it straight on the bookshelf. And interestingly enough, I would have walked past that book dozens, hundreds of times, maybe thousands of times. And with all good intentions, would say to myself on the occasion, I'm going to get to that book shortly, Now, interestingly enough, after that 5-year roller coaster journey of embarking on the industry, I was fortunate enough to meet my first coach, my first business coach, mentor, someone who could start to show me there's a different way to do this in this industry. And I was unpacking a lot of my struggles and frustrations and so forth. And based on a few of the things that I'd spoken about in that initial meeting, this person said to me, "Look, I've got this great book. I think you might benefit from reading. And of course, you know which one it was. It was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I said, I've got that book. He said, have you read it? I said, no. He said, well, there's your first bit of homework. And so, you know, for me, like something like that, I really hold that dear to my heart as a metaphor for all the things I didn't know, didn't do, didn't action back then. I've still got the book today. It's got post-it notes and highlighter and dog ears and all the rest of it. So that part, so in terms of resources, you know, all that book doesn't hold the secret for everybody, for everything in life. I look at it and I really cherish, you know, moments like that. And then the next part you mentioned about actually having somebody, and the first business coach I found, well, that person kind of found me, had this little flyer attached up to the local swimming pool. Personal trainers, do you want more clients? ? And I'm like, okay, what's all this about? I had no idea. Had a name and a phone number, you know. And I was like, okay, well, called him up, and this person starts screening and interviewing me, and I'm going, okay, where's this conversation going? Long story short, this person was a business coach. And so we sat down, and like I indicated, this person very quickly saw a lot of the things that I just, you know, I didn't understand, didn't know, wasn't doing. And although back then, after 5 years in the industry, I'd considered myself quite a good technical personal trainer. I could turn up, I could get people in shape. You know, people kept coming back. All those things. So I was doing a good job. And even at the 5-year mark, what had also happened was that I'd got myself quite busy. So I'd been through this roller coaster journey, but then I got to the point of, you know, keeping a good, consistent book of clientele. However, I was starting to get on that verge of, you know, burnout. So I was working, you know, back then from 5 a.m. till 9 p.m. every day, and we didn't have 24-hour gyms back in the day, but if we did, I'm sure I would have been booking clients at 3 a.m., 10 p.m., all the rest of it. But I would, you know, I'd be the first person in the gym and the last person to leave, and, you know, doing that whole day, and I wore it as a bit of a badge of honour, you know, and I used to say I'd train anyone, anywhere, anytime. Early mornings, you know, late nights, weekends, you name it, I was too afraid to put up my prices. I was too afraid to do things like say no to people in fear that I might upset them. I had no strategy for increasing my fees or my rates. So fortunately, meeting people like that, and then people who could show me, hey mate, number one, you're in business. That's the most important thing. And a feature of what you do is actually turn up and physically train people and do that exchange of time for money. So, you know, those sort of moments, when I think back to them, I really cherish that.
Yeah, and I think there is something to be said in the early days about, you know, putting the hours in. You've got to do things which perhaps you may not do, you know, later on, after speaking to a lot of people who are successful in any realm of business, whether that's, you know, a bookstore, whether it's being an author, a creator. You know, sometimes it's a bit unorthodox in the first, you know, early days. You know, you're working long hours. Yep. People often ask me, oh, you don't do this hour of the morning anymore. I said, well, you know, I have the luxury to say no to that because it just doesn't work for me. But in the early days, you do what you've got to do because, you know, you've got to get your name out there. You've got to build your credibility. You've got to get your experience. I know you're particularly passionate about how to help people avoiding burnout. Before we digress down that avenue, I'd like to talk more about some of the systems and processes that you implemented in the early days, specifically to lead into, you know, working more of the hours you wanted. But for example, now to reference a 20-hour work week, you know, putting your prices up and all of that, rather than, and this is probably part of, you know, avoiding burnout, rather than, you know, a lot of PTs are like, oh, you know, I'm at the whim of my clients. I've got to train them at this time. I can only charge this much. What were some of those key, I guess, systems and processes that you implemented that were game changers, for lack of better words? Yeah,
100%. So for me, when I'd hit that spot, and I'd consider myself to be, you know, quite fully booked out doing 40, back in the day I used to do 1 hour sessions, and that was pretty common. Got myself up to doing 40 1 hour sessions per week, and, you know, although that was good, there was revenue coming in, and I'd hit that spot of feeling, I guess, comfortable or secure. What I knew was that there was no future in doing that, in terms of, you know, burnout was on the horizon. And
what were you charging when you first started?
Oh, when I first started personal training, I was $30 for a 1 hour session.
Yeah, and
five years down the track, I wasn't charging much more than that. So,
and was that standard in Australia? Because you did mention that the other day.
Back then, yeah, about $30 for 1 hour back in 1995 was around about the going rate, for want of a better terminology.
Yeah.
And so, once again, I had no strategy for putting a price against my time. What did I do? I asked around a couple of the people that I knew that were personal training. What did they say? It was $30 for an hour. And I thought, oh, well, you beauty. That's what you must get paid in this industry. You know?
You beauty. Love it.
fascinatingly enough, what I notice in this day and age is that still happens. So someone is now graduating currently as a personal trainer, as a fitness professional, as a coach, and going, okay, what can a PT earn in this country in the year 2021? And they go, okay, it's $70 or it's $80 a session. Okay, cool. That's where I must set my rates then, And so we're very big on going, make sure that you find a way to value yourself against the service that you deliver and the experience that you have for people. So, but yeah, that was the going rate back then. But after 5 years, I really had no strategy for increasing rates. I was too afraid to do it with any of my clients in fear that, I might upset them, or they might do less sessions or stop coming back or all the rest of it. So it wasn't until I hit that mark when I realized that, hey, there's a different way of looking at business. I've got to think as a business owner first. And so what it meant for me was that I could start to move on. And so, to answer the question about what was how did I start to get myself out of that rut, it was thinking like differently. Business owner, I need to have, systems, I need to have processes or people where I could start to leverage myself. And that was the first concept. It was like start to put some systems into place, increase my fees, start to put some policies and procedures in place, and then that set me up where I could hire my first personal trainer. And so for me, the turning point was, not long after I call it the first 5 years was kind of like my apprenticeship or my trial period. And then when I got to that point, it was like, okay, cool, I'm in a position now where I can hire my first PT, and which I did. And then that enabled me to hire my second PT. And my third PT, and I did this all underneath the roof of a commercial gym. So I never owned a gym, a studio, or any of that sort of stuff. I always operated underneath the roof of a commercial fitness facility where I paid a rental fee for myself to be there, and then my team as well. And then over time, I built that up. So I built it up to having a team of 13 trainers, all underneath the roof of one facility. We altered our service to 45-minute sessions at some point along that timeline, and we got that up to doing over 250 45-minute sessions per week over the team. So we built a strong model and a strong business. And so for me, it meant that I could, by leveraging my time, it meant that I could start to do a little bit less in terms of the hands-on, turning up the sessions, and a bit more on growing the business.
Because that seems to be a bit of a crossroads for a lot of trainers. There's a couple of ways to grow your business. One of them is by, for lack of better words, we can grow vertically, we can grow laterally. I'd like to talk about both here. So I had a conversation, I've had many conversations with a lot of trainers over the years, and looking at, well, which way do I go? Do I want to bring trainers underneath me, or do I want to somehow scale with product services and things like what we're doing now?
Yes.
And for me, I found it was the latter rather than the former. Yeah. But I'd love to maybe explore if you've worked with people on both ends, and maybe what some of the pros and cons are with both for the listeners to maybe discern a little bit more, or to gather more information, because there will be some more advanced trainers here, or even trainers that are starting out that maybe go, well, where is that trajectory, or is there a pathway for me forward in either direction? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes 100% sense. And the short answer is that the beauty of the space that we're in 2021 is it does give you the luxury to choose, and you can have the best of both worlds in all these areas. So the short story is, you can follow whichever pathway that you choose, and there is so much opportunity for those of you to do that. So to give you one example, I was working with a personal trainer, and he was at the spot where he was doing $2,500-3,000 a week by himself. He was in a good spot. He'd got his charge out rate at a pretty comfortable level. He'd sort of tick the boxes on every level, and he's like, okay, now it's time for me to hire myself a personal trainer, because I want to go to that next level and I want to derive some passive income. I want to bring somebody through and mentor them as part of my system. So, but what actually happened, the gym that he was operating out of, they just had a policy where he couldn't actually do that, because that was just out of their choice, and he was like, okay, cool, now I'm faced with this crossroad of either A, I move, which I don't want to do because I love the facility and everything's going great, sure. Or B, what else do I do, And so after a bit of brainstorming, what we identified was that he was also building an online offering in terms of his service in his business. And what it meant for him was that we were able to put in the effort to actually build the online side of the business, and then hire the trainer in the online side of the business. So I guess in his mind, it was like the way you hire somebody is to bring them on as a physical person, and they physically train people in the gym and all the rest of it. But it's like, no, it doesn't have to happen that way. And the beauty of the modern era is that he was able to leverage off that, build his online offering, and have his online coach as part of his team. So he's like, well, hold on, now I don't actually have to have these physical trainers anymore. And I'm like, no, not at all, So that's what I see. And I mean, we look at COVID 2020 and, the Zoom, all the stuff, all the great stuff that happened, the word Zoom to many people out there in the general pop was like, Zoom, never heard of it before. But now training and delivering services and so forth, there's just so much opportunity there.
Yeah, I think there's a big rise in telehealth, as they call it now, even training people live. Yep. Via a Zoom. I know a couple of trainers that do it, one in particular at our gym, and I always see him there and he's sort of training his client. She's in the garage and he's there live, and it's like, well, you can do that.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I think that's a great example for a lot of people there. I know, and this is my opinion, like, you've got a lot of red tape, so to speak, sometimes when you bring in trainers on, and now you're like, if you employ them, now I've got to pay them a wage, and they got tax, and they got all these other bloody things.
Sure.
And sometimes, perhaps even for this particular gentleman you were talking about, maybe that was a blessing in disguise, because now we can go, well, Mike, the sky's the limit there, really, isn't it? There's a lot of successful trainers who've got teams of like Flex Success, to probably name one, all around the world. They've got trainers there, and they obviously take a percentage, but they feed the clients, and the brand name surpasses the client flow, if you will.
Yeah. So when we're coaching our clients, and especially people who are running strictly online businesses or have that offering, I mean, I just tell them to look at what we do at Trainer HQ, because we run a business coaching company. We've currently got a staff of 12 or 13 of us. There's myself and Jason who run the company together, and then we have a team of 8 business coaches who deliver the lion's share of the coaching and consulting work. Now, we're based in Brisbane here in Australia. We've got coaches all around the country, and we don't have them in our physical office here in Brisbane. They're remote, so effectively we're kind of running an online business. And we might have a coach in Melbourne, and we have a client in Perth, and we decide that business coach is the best fit for that particular client because of the skills and attributes and so forth and where that client's heading. So once again, the way the modern world enables that to happen. So the people that we're running through that process, we just go, hey, look at what we're doing. Let us unpack for you our model, and you can put that into place in your business,
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think, if anything, it allows not only a better experience for the client, but also for the business owner, because now you're not sandboxing yourself and going, well, you have to work with Jane because Jane's in your area. It might be like, well, you're a better fit for Mark. Mark happens to be on the UK, but we can still make this work.
Absolutely, yeah. And then on the flip side, for physical face-to-face people that are building teams, I mean, the other part to it is what we're very big on is breaking it down step by step in terms of, numbers, stats, figures, and so forth. So any of that stuff, we do have some people that view it as a challenge to go, okay, if I've got to hire somebody, I've got all this stuff to consider. But ultimately, when you've got all that systems, that stuff set up, it should really run quite comfortably. And for most PTs who are operating underneath the roof of a commercial facility around Australia and in many instances around the world, when you have a trainer on and you have that person working for you, doing at minimum 5 sessions a day, 5 days a week, which is at minimum 25 sessions a week. And if they're 45-minute sessions, that's only 17.5 hours of work, which is not a heavy workload, as me and you both know. But we go at a minimum, if we can keep that as a minimum KPI and we can have that person achieve that within their first 3 months, there should be a passive income by the time you've taken out GST, paid gym rent, paid the trainer, all the rest of it, a passive income of somewhere starting at around about $500 per week. And for many people in that situation, that can increase into $600, $700 or $800 a week, So then you start to multiply that out. You go, okay, if I can collect $750 a week, passively per trainer, by the time all these expenses have been paid, and I multiply that to my second trainer, well, there's $1,500 a week. That's now $75,000 a year, If I get 4 trainers, that's now $3,000 a week, and we're now starting to talk some pretty serious numbers. And so that's from that perspective, that's where I see many of our clients have put that system into place, and that's where the appeal lies. And one objection we often hear to that is to go, well, hold on, why are these people going to come and work for you when they can go and do it themselves? And the thing I've seen from 25 years in the industry, I know for a fact that there are many coaches, fitness professionals, trainers out there who don't want to run their own business, who don't want to pay a gym rent, who don't want to have what they would view as the expense, the liability, the responsibility of all this stuff. They don't want to acquire their own clients. What they are is they're great trainers, and they want to turn up and they want to be part of something much bigger than themselves, be part of a team, be able to contribute and give back. And so that's what we encourage people to do, is you don't hunt for the next person with Alex's entrepreneurial spirit, because you're not going to want to come and work for me, because you're going to be doing it on your own, right?
Yeah.
What I'm looking for the person who wants to be part of a team, wants to learn and grow. And, I had trainers over that journey of 13 trainers. I had some of them who moved on, they'd come to me and they might have done their 3 or 4 year stint, so to speak, and say, hey, mate, it's been awesome, loved every minute of it, learnt lots, but I want to go and do this now myself. And you can't stop that. That's a potential that may happen. But ultimately, if you set up the environment and attract the right person, then it's going to be a win-win scenario.
Yeah, it comes down to a bit of profiling and personality types, and as you said, some people, they grow and then they want to fly. And I'm thinking as you're talking through these examples, if you like, and of when I've experienced it or when I've seen it in other gyms, and you sort of see how it operates and how it changes and fluctuates. And I think that's probably a salient point, because like you said, the biggest objection would be, well, why wouldn't someone do this and earn that amount of money? But I remember when I first started personal training, it was in New Zealand many years ago, and I started on a wage. It wasn't a rent-based system. There were larger gyms. I was in a small town in North Island called Tiamutu. And, I was cleaning toilets, I was running the till, I was doing the group fitness, I was cleaning the equipment. But I personally believe that was great, because you got to do everything and it really humbled you.
Yes.
Even though it was the strength gym in this particular town, it was still very much family owned, and there was that sense of community. And I think having that experience really allowed me to go, right, where do I want to take this?
Yes.
And one of the early thoughts, which is going to tie back into what we're talking about, was, I was on that gym floor and I was only 17 turned 18. I was still very young at the time. I was studying 1 year. I started early, and I thought, fuck, man, what happens when I want to take a holiday? I can't see myself doing this till I'm 40 years old.
Yes.
And back then I was earning next to no money because I was on a wage. And I thought, well, even if I was on commission. So even back then, and people were doing the online unbeknownst to me, it was quite sheltered in New Zealand. I thought, there's got to be more to this.
Yeah.
There's got to be more. Can you talk us through what you were charging at the peak or the height of your one-on-one coaching? And do you still do any now? Or are you now just mainly hands-on with helping other people in the mentoring and the day-to-day runnings of Trainer HQ?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my career in the fitness industry as a personal trainer as such went for approximately 20 years. So I did hang up the Lycra, however many years ago, 5 or so years ago. And when I say Lycra, trust me, I wore plenty of Lycra back in the day too. So
leg days, mate. What day is it? You should know.
And but where it kicked off, $30 an hour is where I started charging. 5 years down the track, really hadn't changed that much. And then once I started learning the business systems and the processes, it put me in a position where I could start to really value what I did, have a look back at all the professional development, all the training that I'd done. And, I was an avid learner of new systems, methodologies, techniques. So what I found myself was doing was I was improving myself technically, becoming an outstanding trainer. But I wasn't reflecting that in terms of what I was charging myself out for. So it was like, all right, once I saw the value in what I was supplying for people, it gave me the confidence to say, okay, cool, mate, you are actually worth more than this. So I was able to get my rates up to $50 a session, and then from $50 a session, I got them up to $70 a session. And then I was going through the process of hiring trainers. And so what I also found out was that if I'm going to charge myself out for $50 a session, and then I've got my trainer next to me, and I'm going to charge that person out for $50 a session. Well, what I found very quickly was that people always wanted to train with me. Well,
sure,
if I can have you for $50, I don't want to have that person, right?
Makes sense.
So I had to put a serious enough gap in there that people would make that decision. And so, what I found was sort of somewhere in that sort of $20 to $30 was enough to be able to help people. So I can say to them, look, you are going to get results with this particular person here, plus you're going to be saving the $20 or $30 a session. So that journey continued for me, $70, got it up to $90. And what I found was during that process, I just kept testing the market, and I kept testing, in my opinion, the value that I was delivering to people and the service that I was delivering. got up to $110 a session. And what I found was part of the strategy was to reduce my physical hands-on hours, so move from doing 40 one-hour sessions per week, get it down to 35 one-hour sessions per week, get that down to 30, because when I was on the gym floor training clients, what I was struggling doing was finding more trainers, finding more clients, building more business systems, educating my team, all the stuff which was now important as a business owner. So it was like, all right, well, up to $110 a session, what I still found was that it wasn't providing much in the way of resistance for people starting up. And this is back in around about 2002. So where are we now? We're almost,
this is good to give context.
Yeah, so about 20 years ago almost. Yeah. And at $110 a session, people kept booking in. And I'm thinking...
That's just to underscore, that's a lot back then. I mean, because I charge that now. I mean, you know what I mean? And back then, that would have been like, fuck. But, this is kind of going to digress into where I'm going with this, like, limiting beliefs,
Yeah. And then, so from there, it was like, well, I'm thinking, what do I need to charge here to sort of train less people and have less attracted to me? And trust me, I love training my clients. And I was extremely passionate about it. There's not one part of me that was, thinking I need an exit here. But I'm going, well, what I need to do is reduce these hands-on hours. So what I decided was that I was going to double my rates.
Because this is the dilemma, isn't it? Because a lot of people, you feel bad, and I still do, because I'm about to do another price increase. But you have to do it.
It's part of business, So
I think this shapes also your clientele.
Yeah.
I find the people who truly value, they don't bat an eyelid. They're like, and you get more of that, sort of avatar. And maybe we'll dive into that a little bit later. But continue.
100%. So I decided now the plan is to double the rate. So go from $110 a session up to 220. And sure enough, before I knew it, I had my first $220 paying client. Now, for all the $110 people, I took them up to a midway point. They went up to a $150, and I had a strategy for that to say, well, because you've been such a value client, I'm not going to ask you to pay the $220, but you are going to increase. So
how did that conversation go? Because I know this is a question I've gotten to be like a lot of people now going, well, what do you say? How do you preface that? Maybe paint as a picture.
Yeah, so I guess in the position I was in, and at that point in time, I'd built it to a team of around about 5 or 6 PTs. So the good news was that I did have a fallback plan for those people. And I had some of them who came on the journey with me.
Yeah, options.
And who were like, the price is irrelevant. I see the value, I want to train with you. I had others who were like, mate, I love training with you. It is awesome. But there is no way in fucking hell I'm paying $150 or $200 to train with you. So
I love the honesty, man. Because some people are going to turn around and say that.
Correct, and I got that. But the beauty is that we had an amazing team where I could then offer them to train with somebody else, and they could still get the results that they were after, and so forth. And so that's one part to it. Now, what I found on that journey was that I continued on and things were going well. I've got $200 paying clients. Things were moving along particularly well. I went to a fitness conference down in Melbourne, and this was in about 2003. And I remember it was quite
Filex.
It was a Filex, that's right, yeah. And there was about 100 odd people in the room, and I took my team of trainers down there. We were up sort of the back sort of 3/4 of the room, and I remember the person had asked, what does everyone charge anyway? It's $50, and a whole bunch of people put up their hands, and $60, and hands kept going up and down. Then he got to about 80, and it sort of pitted out. It's 1 or 2 people. Oh, nice work, and anyone over 80, anyone 100, and I think a hand might have gone up somewhere, and all right, that's great. Anyone else over and above that? And I was like, yep. And all right, what are we? 120, are we? 140, How much is it, mate? 220, and it was like the whole room just went, and fascinatingly enough, for the rest of that weekend, people were pulling me up. How the fuck does people pay you $220? I think they're thinking something magic. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Hang on, what's he doing after these sessions? He's offering a bit more, this fella.
Hot towels, fireworks. Happy endings,
Jesus. Yeah.
Had to pay a lot more for the happy ending anyway.
No, for sure. That was $500.
$20 is $20. But anyway, things were moving along particularly well at that point in time, and we'd grown a good team of trainers. I'm charging $200 a session, but then what I also found was that my goal was to do around about 10 sessions per week now. So reduce those 40 odd sessions right down to 10, because at 10 hands-on hours, I can still generate around about $2,000 into the business per week. Plus, that affords me the time to work on all the other stuff, which was finding more clients, doing the marketing, the lead gen, hiring more trainers, training up the trainers. So that's where I had to make the shift from just Brad the trainer to Brad the business owner, and that's my now responsibility. Anyway, the turning point for me to move from $220 to $440 for a single session was, I looked around, and for several weeks, and I was tracking all the stats and figures, and I'm up around 18 or 17, 18 $220 sessions a week,
Yeah.
And all that was good for revenue. It wasn't good for time management and so forth. And I'm like, all right, the time has come, and it's like time to go to 440. And I had
you didn't make small jumps. You weren't fucking around.
That's right.
You were going, I'm doubling this.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought, well, that's the philosophy, and I realised that some will, some won't. And my response to that is it's not up for me to decide what someone will or won't pay for my service. I go, I know I'm great at what I do, and I know I'll deliver a great service, and I also know that there will be someone out there who will pay that fee. I had a coach at the time, someone that I was working with, and I'd mentioned this to that person. I said, I've made the decision. I'm going to go to 440, and he laughed. Right? He goes, who the hell's going to pay you $400 for a PT session? Me and him joke about this because he's going, fuck, I wasn't a very good coach, was I? And I said, I'm not sure, but somebody will, and there'll be someone out there. Within about a week, sure enough, I had my first $400 paying client.
Is this in Sydney?
No, this is in Brisbane.
This is in Brisbane.
I was in
now,
Brisbane,
right?
yeah. And that person, the words that came out of that person's mouth was, because when I presented it, even though I'd had a lot of experience in building up my rates and charging $200 and all the rest of it, I was still fucking nervous presenting $400 to somebody. And once again, the other part to it is that I realised that that's not for everybody, right? So I'm not walking in there going, hey, you're going to be my perfect $400 paying client, but I realised there'll be someone out there who would. Anyway, he said to me, mate, words verbatim, I believe in life you get what you pay for. And I want to train with you, so let's do it, And I remember at the time, and with all my training, trying to separate myself from the emotional connection, I was acting all cool, I think I can fit you in, but inside I was going, fucking yes,
Yeah, you get back in the PT office, yes! What happened? Oh, PB, mate. Yeah, PB, personal best.
So, yeah, and then that's the other part about the 200, 400, all that part. Like, I see it as in some ways kind of irrelevant, the actual figure. It was more important that I separated myself from the money and go, well, I realise there are people out there that have a certain disposable income. So, one of the $400 paying clients, and once again, because I get to deal with lots of PTs over the years, one of the most common questions I got asked is, who the hell pays $400 for PT, and what are these people? Who are they? And I'd given up trying to think or decide for other people because of all the people that paid that over the years. There was not one common pattern. Obviously, one part is a disposable income, so that part was critical. But in terms of the personality type or whatever, so I remember this one particular client that trained with me and signed up at that $400 rate. He'd been referred to me by my physiotherapist colleague, and he'd been going to see Michael because he had chronic back pain. This guy was 53 years old. And although he was 53, he was out of shape. He was overweight. I mean, he looked like he was 73. He was not looking good. And the referral came across and he said, look, can you just get this guy moving? Because if you don't, he's going to be in a lot of discomfort and he could die an early death. He's not looking well. So anyway, I met with this guy, 53 years old. He had not exercised as an adult. So that all stopped up once he had left school. So 30-odd years. Yep. He was overweight, chronic back pain. That's why he was going to the physio. Anyway, I just had to get this guy moving. Now, I'm picturing this guy just probably needs to start, walking around the block with plastic-coated dumbbells. That would be a good start, right? So I'm not sitting there thinking this is going to be my perfect $400 paying client. Anyways, we go through the process, and at that point in time, we had a structure on how I presented fees. It went 440. My next trainer down was 175, and then it went 135, 110. 99, 88, and 77. So there was a big range of rates depending upon which trainer you were with and so forth. So once I'd been through the whole process and I saw that this guy really wanted help. Once we flip over and he saw the rates, he goes, I'm going to train with you. And he goes, because you're obviously the best. And he goes, at the next person down, mate, there's a chance I'm not going to turn up. And he goes, at $400, buddy, I'm definitely coming.
Well, this is you like you said, you're going to turn up, aren't you? You're going to apply yourself.
That's right. Well, he booked in 3 times per week. So
Jesus Christ.
$400 a session, 3 sessions a week. Do the maths, $1,200 a week. Now for him, that
3 hours of work.
It was,
That's phenomenal.
For him it was he had a very high disposable income, and that was a small portion of it. But probably the thing I took away was, number one, he was in enough pain, discomfort, and where he needed to act. Number two is he was someone who wanted the best when he did stuff. And the next one down is that a couple of $100 a week, there's a chance I might turn up, 165, 175 thereabouts. Hey mate, at $400, I'm definitely going. And he traded with me under that arrangement for about 12 months.
Yep. Until
after 12 months, he saw me once a week, and I was able to move him to one of my other team members for several times a week. So
for sure,
for 12 months, he was like, I'm investing in this, and this is me to get in shape.
100%.
So. But yeah, I mean, geez, I could tell you many stories, but probably the big thing for me was turning up and I didn't set out to be, the highest paid PT. If you asked me when I kicked off, mate, one day you'll charge $400 a session, I would have said you're crazy. I would not have believed it, had not seen any evidence of it, all the rest of it. But once I started to get in and see that there are people out there that value it highly, then it just gave me the evidence to say, well, hey, you make the decision, and it can't be at the mercy of the success of my business. I'm not there, fingers crossed, geez, I hope I can sign up a $400 person. They'll never come, but so I was like, build a business, and what I found was that gave me the security to be able to open myself up to the right people.
Yeah, I think that's a key thing there, and as you said, it's not necessarily, I'm resonating with, there isn't a particular pattern apart from the disposable income. I remember when I put my prices up to 110, which was big for me, and I thought, oh fuck, and I had a couple of people drop off, and I offer an online option and a couple of other ongoing options where they just get programming, etc. You're always refining. And then straight away I had 3 new clients 3 times a week at 110. So I was like you, I was I was like, well, I'll see if I've got the room. But that again, that keeps happening. It keeps happening.
Yeah.
And a pattern I've noticed is, and this can be, the mindset of a trainer who earns X amount of dollars an hour and not having the limiting beliefs where, you get to a point where, and I can understand a lot of trainers are out there, you run yourself ragged and you go, right, time, money, what are you going to do? You need to do something. So, some clients will go, oh, you're trying to get rid of me with the price. Like, no, I'm not. I've got to keep to the session time because I want to keep providing these high quality sessions. I've also got to respect and value my time and my clients, because aside from this, there's all of this other stuff that goes into, whether it's programming, whether it's marketing, podcasting, whatever you're doing.
Correct.
And you will find that, 1 or 2 or 3, whatever it is, drop off, and sure enough, you get one that's better. And it's more idealized, and I have found, to second what you're saying, the more I charge, the better caliber client I get.
Yes.
Because you bet your ass they're turning up.
That's right.
But for the most part, but now I'm getting to that point where I'm like, well, yeah, no, there's more here, and I think maybe to touch base, and this might be an apprehended question, goes without saying, you're obviously delivering a lot of value here.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So in terms of you are getting testimonials, and this might sort of diverge into the next aspect we want to talk about in marketing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, were you doing with your clients, obviously you got your progress pictures, etc. Were you upskilling in any other ways aside from the business element, or was this purely with a Cert 3 and 4, or were there any other educational add-ons to this? Because again, ultimately, it's like I always use the term, I guess the caveat, Branson. He's not a PhD, right?
Yeah.
But she doesn't need to be, because he goes, well, fucking look at the results.
Yeah.
And I always sort of find that balance between, I'm a bit of a closet nerd. I love all that. I love nutrition. We talked about that. I'm doing that at the minute. But there is a point where you can have too much academia.
Yeah.
Like, you get these people who are just like keyboard warriors, and you're like, yeah, but mate, you've never applied it. And then you've got our, the lovely girl who's bouncing around like a butterfly all the time. She's got the best intention, but she fucking can't get a result to save her life.
Yeah.
And we all know these archetypes of people. And I think it's striking this balance between, obviously you need the business, but you need to be a great communicator. You need to be confident, but you do need to understand a certain level of, the thermodynamics, the science behind physiology.
100%.
To actually get people stronger, leaner, losing weight, bigger, whatever it is they want to achieve. Yeah. Perhaps you can touch base on some of that went into, the package of, hey, well, I'm a $400 trainer, or this is my price.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that once again, I look at that whole let's call it a triangle of success in many ways. It's like there's the technical side of training, there's the business side of running a fitness business, and then there's the, let's call it the personal development or the emotional intelligence component. And what I've seen is in the industry, the best performers have that beautiful blend of that. I understand that I've got to be a great technician. I understand that I've got to understand business and the different components, and I understand that I have to be great at understanding people and assisting them to deal with my own stuff first, so which would set me up for success with other people. So yeah, for me, I mean, the turning point was like in the late 90s. You know, I got in and started studying Paul Chek, and he was the guy famous for putting Swiss balls on the gym floor. And
sure.
So I remember, you know, transitioning off bench presses, and you know, it was just all dumbbell presses off Swiss balls, and started the Poliquin stuff. And you know,
I remember that era in my gym in New Zealand. I said, why have you got him on a Swiss ball, mate? Poliquin. Right, okay.
Yeah, so for me, like, I just became a sponge for all of it. And, you know, it was always, you know, how can I find these little 1%ers which can make a difference?
Yeah, absolutely.
But then on the business side of it, you're 100% correct. It was like, how do we now showcase our best stuff? And what I found was your best clients become your walking, talking evangelists. Yes. So we were mostly attracting people who are on a body transformation progression. So that's what our main type of clientele was after. And what we found was that, you know, just by being able to attract the right people, get them the results, then it started to grow that way. But yeah, I would say 100%. And back to charge rates, you know, from my perspective, I don't care what someone charges. That's completely their decision. But the thing I would say to people coming in the industry is, obviously, you don't just jump in and go, okay, beauty, I'm going to start charging 100, 150 a session, right? It's like, well, you got to earn your stripes, get some experience and get somewhere. So I have absolutely no dramas with someone charging a lower fee when they kick themselves off to get themselves some clients and get their results and all the rest of it. Yeah. But once again, what I see way too often is someone who started charging $50 in the industry, and 3 or 4 years later, they're still charging $50 because they haven't learnt some of these processes, haven't got themselves more technically skilled and all the rest of it, you know. So, and I guess in some way you potentially argue someone hasn't invested in themselves. Maybe you're not justified to charge more. And so, but once again, I've also seen many people who are well technically skilled and just not attracting the type of clientele and not attracting the type of fee that they're probably worth, and doesn't stack up to that. And in many ways, they become the best kept secret.
Yeah, it is. It's multifaceted. And I think when we talk about value, I used to talk a lot about this with one of my good friends and business partners in another venture. And we talked about, you know, imagine earning $1,000 an hour. And back then, you know, it can seem very inconceivable. And this comes back down to the, you know, the mental model and mindset. Yep. But ultimately, it's perceived value. You know, it's we'll use examples that are relatable. People will spend $10,000 on a watch, $100,000 on a watch. People will spend $1 million on a car. Now, it goes without saying you need the cash, or you should have the cash for that. But
yes,
you know, you've got people who go, even if I had that money, I would never spend that. And it's like, well, yeah, but you would spend it on something. Yes. There would be something. And again, why? It's you perceive that value. Yep. I heard the maddest fact the other day. Now, I don't know whether this is 100% true, so I'm just going to put that out there. But it was Louis Vuitton or Chanel, when they have extras, they burn it. They don't ever put it on sale or give it away. Like they literally burn. So say they're doing like they've got a limited edition of something. Yeah. Because if it's not paid for, they don't want it on people. Wow. Now that's extreme, but it kind of illustrates that there are markets out there. And I think sometimes we can be quite sheltered. I mean, you know, we're here talking in Brisbane, Australia. It's probably a place where health and fitness is prevalent. Yeah. You know, we've got some of the best coaches in the world. We've got a lot of the worst. There's a weird transition here because the barrier to entry is low. Yeah. But we forget there's you know, I'm a passion for motor racing. I grew up in that realm. You know, you look at what these Formula One drivers, their coaches are charging. You know, maybe you look at LA, you look at London, it's all part of an ecosystem. And sometimes we forget that, you know, it is possible. Yeah. And sometimes we can take some of those lessons and bring them, you know, into our own backyard. And if you can create that value, you can generate this income. I want to talk more about marketing. Now, it's obviously evolved from when you started. Now we're very much online. You know, there's a lot going on there. Yep. What are the biggest mistakes you see trainers make in this day and age in marketing? Yep. And some of the, I guess, the most simplest key takeaways to market yourself, aside from what we've already talked about, which I'd argue is still the best, which is, you know, word of mouth. You know, hey, this is John. This is where he started. This is where he is. he's telling people, like you said, you're evangelist, go and train with Alex, go train with Brad.
Yeah.
We've got Facebook, we've got Instagram. It can seem overwhelming. There's so much out there. So, how would you simplify that for the listeners to give them some jumping off points?
Absolutely. A couple of parts to it. And I guess once again, if I reflect back to my own personal story, when I first kicked off, I at the time saved up all this money that I didn't have, and they had the local newspaper, probably still gets distributed in wherever you live. And in the local newspaper, I prepaid for like 8 weeks of advertising, a quarter of a page ad. Keep in mind, 1995, we're pre, internet, all that sort of stuff. So anyway, I designed the ad, right? And as the newly crowned, bodybuilding champion, of course, because I designed the ad, 80% of the ad was occupied by a photo of myself. And the headline said words to the effect of, come train with the champ, with a phone number there. Now, sat around waiting for the phone to ring after 8 weeks, and of course nobody called. And what do you think I concluded about advertising on that day?
Doesn't work.
Doesn't work. It's a waste of money, waste of time, all the rest of it. When really I didn't understand that there was a strategy and a process behind marketing and generating leads. What I see in this day and age still in 2021 are people who are heavily features based. So it's about, I'm Brad's PT. I deliver, body conditioning, weight loss, kickboxing, whatever it might be. These become features of a program. And, the stats tell us that it's around about, maybe 3 to 5 maximum % of people are ready to purchase today. So if I'm on Facebook and I'm scrolling, there's a very small percentage of people that are just going to go, oh, Brad's PT, beauty. It's exactly what I was looking for, So for most people, they're not ready to purchase today. So we have to keep that part in mind. So if we want to speak to the other 97% of people, it's all about how do we start to commence some type of relationship with that person. And so, from our perspective, we're very big on building databases, being able to build a community so that you can find a way to be able to introduce yourself to somebody to take that, so they can take that first step with you. So if you are in any type of business, it doesn't even have to be in the fitness industry. It's all about going, how do I piece together some sort of content, and we refer to it as content-based marketing. How do I find a way where I can deliver some information to somebody that may be interested? Okay, and if I see something about fat loss, because that's something that I'm potentially interested in, well, now you've got my interest and I've potentially clicked on that. Now, right now, you're not asking me to purchase anything. Our recommendation is to go, we want to give something away, something you would see of high value, so the end user, the person who's going to digest your stuff, can actually commence a relationship with it, so they have a read of it. Okay, this stuff makes sense. I'm liking what Alex is talking about. I'm liking what somebody else is talking about.
Like an ebook or something, or a video.
An ebook, yeah. And from there, there's typically some sort of exchange of name, potentially email, potentially phone number, depending upon the intricacy of this strategy. But the idea there is to go, allow us to now start to commence and nurture this relationship. So from that perspective, anyone in any industry, you've got skills, you've got secrets, you've got things that could benefit somebody who is of interest to that. So if I step outside the fitness industry for a moment, one of my very good friends is piecing together a new business, and his strategy is about attracting car enthusiasts, people who love taking old cars, rebuilding them, restoring them, and so forth. And so he's got a business model on the back end of it. But what we brainstormed was him putting together the strategy and to go, here's the top things you need to look for before you go and purchase your second-hand car, So if I'm in the market and I think, I might get into this thing, well, now I've got the Bible, I've got the report, which tells me exactly the questions I need to ask and the things I need to look for. And so that's a great example of it. So from that perspective, what it enables you to do is start to build a database, knowing that 3% of people are ready to purchase today. And hey, someone might see you and just go, hey, that stuff I read was awesome. What's the next step?
Yeah.
But for others, they might be consuming, they might be listening, watching your video, they might be reading your report, they're on your email list, and they start digesting your stuff. And now what happens is you start to get seen as, in their mind, the expert, someone who could potentially be the obvious best choice if and when they need help and assistance. And so really effectively, that's what we break it down to, and to go, how can you start to think about securing tomorrow's business today by having an effective lead gen strategy. And so probably the biggest trap people fall into is trying to sign somebody up today. Meet you, hey, Alex, mate, would you like to get started? You're like, well, no.
No foreplay, mate. It's no foreplay.
That's right. So, yeah, and really that's in a nutshell. We can go into huge amounts of depths on the strategy behind that, but ultimately we just see too many people jumping steps way too quickly, and that can come from desperation. If you're in a position where you go, today I need cash flow, well, it may impact your decision, so...
This is true. It's a salient point. This is obviously something you do very well at Trainer HQ. I've noticed, with your courses, with your content, there's videos coming through, like there's the ebooks coming through, there's podcasts, etc. There's, again, you're giving value, and I don't know whether this rings true to your knowledge, but there is a rule of, they say, 7 times before someone buys out, whether that is or not. I think, there's obviously a rule against the law, but generally, depending on the product, you're going to be, and I think possibly the higher the value, the more you need to sort of deliver, if you will, where you become the authority, you build trust, you build rapport, and then people start to listen, believe, and then obviously buy for you, or whatever that process is.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit, whether that has been, I guess, accurate with your experience here at Trainer HQ before people actually, if you look at the trends and analytics, is it, okay, that's actually, or no, it's 3 or it's 4 or whatever it might be.
Yeah, 2 parts to it. First things first, after 14 years of running this business coaching company and up to 200 clients every year joining our higher level business coaching programs, one thing that we've said right from day one is to say, look, no matter where someone sits on the timeline of, prospective client or ultimately, one of our walking, talking evangelists who's been on the program for 6 or 7 years, which we've got people in that position, we want to produce content in such a way that if someone just consumes something for free, walks away, reads the book or whatever, and goes, that made a difference, then we've ticked the box on that. We're like, yep, mission accomplished, because, ultimately, no matter whether they become a client or not, we want them to be able to get their hands on what we would consider best practice strategy on how to build a successful fitness business. So if that's all someone did, then that's absolutely fantastic. But we also know that from there, people go, I've read the book. All right, cool. What else is out there? What else have these guys got? So they tune into our podcast and they subscribe to our email list and all the rest of it. So, and you're exactly right. When we have new clients coming through into our business coaching program, what we often hear is, hey, I've been listening to your podcast, I've been watching your guys' videos, I've read the book, I've tick the box, tick. And so from our perspective, we haven't got to sit there and try to explain what we do. They've already been listened. They're well in tune with it, So the more of that from our perspective, the better. And when we're coaching other businesses, we say that's the strategy, So you want to make sure that you get your content out there in such a way that people can digest it. You did discuss different platforms, and that's the other part, because that part can be, for any small business owner, incredibly confusing. The trap, in my opinion, and I can only speak of where we try and educate our clients, is that the trap to fall into is feeling like you've got to be everything to everyone on every single platform.
I'm glad you've addressed this. We're going to go down this avenue.
Because the way I view it for many business owners is that could be exhausting, it could be time consuming, and unless it ultimately you can do it for a period of time and you can see a definite result, then I'd go, well, hold on. What we need to do is maybe start with the one, potentially 2 platforms and we go back to, first of all, target clients. Where are my target clients hanging out, i.e. where is the space where I'm going to best connect with them based on their demographic, based on who they are, and then I'm going to sink some serious energy into that platform. What it means for me is that I can typically be able to repurpose that content without too much effort. But the thing I'd say to many is to go, don't fall into the trap of trying to be the expert on YouTube whilst being the expert on Insta, whilst being the dominating LinkedIn and all the rest of it at the same time. Because once again, you can just start to spread yourself too thin, unless there's a very easy strategy on being able to move that stuff around without too much effort.
Yeah, there's a lot of great things you said there, and I think to unpack a few of them, which aligns with some of the best advice I got, is that, you shouldn't feel that you have to do everything, because it is overwhelming, but also certain mediums are just not going to be bespoke to your personality or your skill sets. When I did a podcast in the early days with a gentleman called Danny Lennon, I asked him, what advice would you give to people wanting to start a podcast? And he said, I wouldn't, because it's not for everyone. And he goes, and advise against something that you're forcing yourself into. Obviously, it's always going to be a challenge. You've got to hone skills, but like you said, it's better to go, right, pick one or two things that are perhaps more aligned. If if you're good in front of the camera, maybe it's YouTube. If you're good on the mic, it's podcasting.
Yep.
But then I think the second part to that is, like you said, you can rehash it. Like with this now, we can do Instagram with this. We've got podcasts, we've got YouTube. We can do an actual physical post about it. We can share it. There's just so many ways, and there's probably more just on the top of my head that you could hash this up into. So I think that is a key thing in terms of being clever with your time, and then being able to, as you said, repurpose it, get it into different platforms, and therefore you've saved yourself time rather than just I guess going, I've got to post on this and then I've got to do that. Because I tell you what, I mean, there was a time where I tried to do everything and wow.
Yes.
You get nothing done, and your screen's time up, and it's depressing, and then you're losing sight of the basics. Like, you're not present with your clients, and it's like never neglect those basics.
Yeah.
I think
that's right.
Going forward, which is big.
And from there, it's really you. Ultimately, if you're doing it for the purpose of business, you need to track and measure it, So that's the other part to it. It's to go, well, I need to assess exactly how much time, effort, and energy I'm putting into this stuff. And ultimately, are there any type of, am I trying to build what's my end goal in here? Am I just trying to build another follower so I could potentially then have that person sign into something? Or where does this thing look? And over the course of 3 months, you can look back on it and go, I put X, Y, or Z time in, and what did it produce for me in terms of, say, new business? And you might find that, hey, that was a really good use of time, effort, and energy. But on the flip side, you might say, well, I spent a whole lot of time but didn't get any result of it. And so then we'd start to question, well, what's the process? Is the messaging matching up and all the rest of it?
And I guess that's where it just gets more and more intricate, and like how a lot of those little key nuances, if you will, can really change the trajectory and even the effort versus the reward.
Trust me, over 25 years in business, 14 years of running this business coaching company. Trust me, we're very quick to sack stuff, pause it. We're going. We've spent lots of money in different platforms, and we'll run a campaign. It'll be going fantastic, and then the next campaign we run will go terrible. And we've done everything from securing $3 leads through to securing $150 leads. And we can laugh at it, but at the time you're going, this campaign, $150 a lead, to secure a name, an email, and a phone number, and then to find out that person is not even the right person anyway. And but ultimately, it's like, this is part of being in business, to really understand how do I put together a strategy that's going to serve me long term, but also set it up in such a way so it's agile enough to move with the times and be able to flow with the right type of clientele that are searching for it.
Yeah, and you can't buy that experience, which is probably why having this business set and having people be able to come in and learn from you guys, they don't often see on the surface what they're getting. You know what I mean? I think this is the value of investing in mentors, reading books, courses that are legitimate, because you don't realize those people, those services, those products can save you. It might be an initial investment. People see it as an expense. You got the wrong mindset. It's an investment on what you can do with it that can fast forward you. I always say to my clients, look, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to teach you the things I wish I would have knew.
Yes.
The things I wish someone would have sat down and taught to me to the best of my ability. And all transparency, in 5 and 10 years' time, I want to be able to look back and go, and now there's a whole lot more. And I've changed my mind on a few things, and I'm okay about that, but I'm moving forward, and ultimately, I think if you're upfront with people, as you said with your clients before, they're along for the journey, they're committed, they accepting you for the total package, not just, it's this or this, it's the entire experience.
Yeah, that's right. You're purchasing into the 25 years plus of experience, plus all the times, the trials, the tribulations, the successes, plus all the challenges and struggles along the way, So it's a key part of it. And, once again, I personally still love being in business after 25 years because I'm constantly learning and finding new processes and strategies as well, So
for sure. And as we get into the tail end of the podcast, and I appreciate you being so generous with your time, Brad, I'd love to, before I get into the rapid fire, or what I call the rapid fire questions, a bit more fun in nature, I'd love for you to give us a bit of a day in the life now, just to kind of contrast, where you started and what it's like in the day-to-day runnings of HQ. I find people love that question, and it's a great way to really connect with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So my perfect day starts at 3:40 a.m., so that's my alarm. Bounce out of bed, straight through, butter coffee is how I kick off the morning. And for most mornings, I'm exercising early. So 3 or 4 days a week, I go to a CrossFit gym. A couple of days a week, I go mountain biking. Other day, I might go for a run, So I sort of tried to have quite a nice sort of overall blended sort of exercise regime.
Diversity.
But usually it's sort of by about 5 a.m. I've kicked off. So at my first part of the day, while I'm drinking my coffee, I'll be doing my journaling and so forth. And at that point in time for me, it's just my 15, 20 minutes to just be able to sort of let the mind and the creativity go. Done the exercise component, and then either option A is I'm back home. There's myself and my wife, plus we've got 2 kids. Daughter's 12, son's 11, and so be back home, family time, hanging out with them. They're getting ready for school. There's all that kind of home banter, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And then from there, generally getting into the office, which is 3 kilometres from home. So I live very close to the office. And I often joke about my whole life's in this sort of like 3 kilometre bubble where, gym, home, office, work, everything I do is, I say I get nosebleeds if I got to go 10K away, So
efficient, mate.
And so that for me, by about 9 a.m. will be a normal clock on time. And then inside the office, depending upon what we've got inside our headquarters now, out of a team of 12 or 13 of us, we've literally got 2 or 3 of us in the head office. So you're in the head office up in Brisbane now, but the way the modern business and the way the modern world is, our whole team is spread all around the country, there's myself and Jace typically in here 4 days a week, and then knock-off time could be sort of anywhere around about sort of, from 3 p.m. onwards, and depending upon what commitments and so forth that we got. So, the way I view it is that, do we work hard? Yeah, the answer is absolutely. Mm-hmm. But we also work smart. So from my perspective, it's all about going, how do you, achieve the maximum amount you can in the sort of in the minimum amount of time, might be one word for it. But then I have other times when it requires me to do more, and I'm in a position where I can rip in and do that. So back in the afternoon is more family time. Kids are right into sports, gymnastics. We've got a French bulldog that we walk, and so we do all that sort of stuff, dinner. But for me, the perfect bedtime is sort of around about 9 p.m. because I love that 3:40 get up, and so I can have good quality rest. And I could sleep for Australia, so if we did have a national sleeping team, I'd definitely qualify for that. So I have no dramas doing that. So when it's time to sleep, boom, I'm gone. Time to get up, rip straight into it. So
nice. Yeah. It's very it's an action-packed day.
Yeah.
Get up with motivation, go to bed with satisfaction, and all
that.
It's
good. And once again, like I turned 47 this year, just I've engineered that. It's like how do I sort of construct the perfect life, in my opinion? Well, it's just you find ways to be able to build that and live it the way you want it to be.
For sure. And I think you fine tune over time. You find what works. You play around with wake times, and obviously you have a partner, you have a family, that changes the dynamics again. Now you got right now, how can I rearrange that? And I always find you get these what I like to call like light bulb moments where you have these almost limiting beliefs, and you're like, no, I can actually change that to that, and then you do, and you're like, oh, why didn't I do that sooner?
Yes.
And then you've got this whole, you've freed up something, or you've rearranged your training time, or you've changed your clients to AM, PM, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it just frees up a bit of mental space. And I think, there is that individuality element to it where people have got to play around.
Yep.
Sometimes with, habits and routines are massive. I'm really big on the either in the morning and the evening rituals. You mentioned journaling, a lot of other bits and pieces, getting up, exercising, having that time serving yourself before you serve others. I think that's critical.
Yes.
But I think sometimes people are so indebted to, I've got to do it that way. It's like, well, no. As long as you're doing it and it works for you, that's fine.
Absolutely.
Meditation's different for different people.
Yeah. And no matter what time of the day you do it or where that sits in, and if that's a thing for you, then, find the strategy to do it. There's another day if I'm not exercising, and what I also do enjoy is if I clock on, I've got a home office, and I can generally be clocked on by 4 a.m. and I can get through and do 4 hours of pretty much uninterrupted business work up until about 8 a.m. And it's like, while most people are sleeping, I've been able to rip in and just get a whole bunch of quality stuff done when my brain's nice and fresh. And so there's another part. And I look back on when I do those days and I go, geez, I really value those as well, because you can just get so much done,
Yeah, I do. I resonate massively because I was never quote unquote morning person. I started learning more about sleep and the different archetypes, of it. But nowadays, I'm the sharpest in the morning. You know what I mean? I'm very selfish with that time.
Yeah.
And I'm very hesitant to give it away to other things, because I know if there's anything that's very mentally heavy to do, that's my time.
Yep.
And there is something quite peaceful about getting up before the world is sort of cranked into gear, wherever you are, AM, PM, but it's just something, and it's just this serenity, and obviously for you, the kids aren't up, it's just you time.
Yes.
Even the sun off in the time, so you can just bang, crack in, and you've just got this brilliant trajectory. And then obviously things start to get a little bit sticky and grindy after that, and you just don't get that clear run. I have found. So
I definitely resonate with that statement, that's for sure. But try and get me on some serious brain stuff at 7 p.m. at night, and maybe not as sharp, but
I'm useless after 12. No, I always say I'm better with the more creative and the sort of social aspect after midday, but before midday, that's where I do my heavy mental lifting. When it's formulas or it's studying or it's reading or it's something that's very critically important. I need an AM for me, but everyone is different, so I encourage the listeners to try it out. Rapid fire questions, they're a bit more fun in nature. Before we get on to the final question I ask all my guests, and the first one is, in your current day-to-day, or with your role here at HQ, what's the most rewarding part of what you do, and what's the most challenging at this point in time?
Good questions. I guess most rewarding for us is just seeing the change in people. So we've when I look at all the people that we've had through the program, and I look at the lives that have been impacted as a result of that. So, I could rattle off many, many different success stories and clients, but people that are started in the industry earning $300 or $400 a week, and have now got a business that has a facility that's turning over $6,000 a week with a team of people and so forth. And you go, this person really had no idea that was going to happen, but just trusted in us and trusted in the process, and go, if I just get around this and I learn the strategies, then I can, there's potentially there. So I'll look at that sort of stuff, and we just constantly get blown away by it. In terms of the challenge, I guess for us as a business, at a team of 12 or 13, our current strategy is all about going, how do we ultimately expand this even further? So our goal is to take Trainer HQ outside of Australia. So we're 90% dominant in Australia, and what I mean by dominant, that's where 90% of our business comes from, and we have a small percentage of 10% of our business comes from overseas. We go, well, we really feel like we've got a lot to offer, and so from our perspective, the challenge lies in going, exactly what does that look like? And how we originally built this business was on running seminars and workshops and so forth, and over the years we've been able to change the model so we weren't reliant upon running a workshop. Part of our strategy was thinking, okay, well, maybe we need to take ourselves to the States, or maybe we need to do something to get ourselves there. But we've also realised that that's not necessary. And so I guess from our perspective right now, it's engineering the right pathway to be able to open ourselves up to that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense for sure. Top 3 book recommendations that you would gift or highly reference to a lot of your, I guess, clients, or even for the listeners right now?
Yes.
And maybe it's the one that you mentioned earlier.
Well,
and actually read it.
Yeah, definitely that one. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Covey, just in my opinion, a genius, and many sort of, other resources that he's produced. So that's definitely one of them. The other one that really influenced me heavily back in the day was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and everything that the Rich Dad, Poor Dad strategy talks about. So, that really impacted my understanding of going, okay, move from not only business owner, but to then be able to move into the area of investor, and to understand that, hey, business can be able to generate income, but from there it goes, what other assets can I invest in to be able to secure my long-term wealth? So that one, definitely. And then the other one you mentioned about gifting, for many friends and close people I've gifted, his needs, her needs, relationship, people that are getting engaged and so forth. So from that perspective, I just see so much value in being able to invest in your own emotional growth, your own emotional intelligence, which will assist any relationship, person to person. And so that, for me, they're definitely the ones.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think as we're talking about when we arrived, that is an area which is well neglected You
Yes.
know what I mean? Like health and relationships. If you've not got that, you've not got anything. So why wouldn't you want to invest?
Yes.
I was having a discussion, just to digress slightly, with a lady this morning, and she was telling me about, some friends, and they've unfortunately broken up and this, that, and the other. And I said to her, have you heard about the 5 love languages? Because she was on about, how this dynamic of generation has changed. And I said, ultimately people, they work on a business, they grind, they might make a success of it or not. It's what you put in is what you get out. It's the same with the physique, right?
Yep.
It's a lot of things in life. Anything you can apply this, but for some reason, it would appear that people think they're entitled to a flawless relationship.
Yes.
And I don't know what is going on with this generation, whether it's mine, whether it's sort of the next one, where they just feel that that's a God-given.
Yes.
And that the honeymoon period isn't going to end. And, I'm not massively experienced in this, but I've had some great conversations with minds much brilliant than my own, and the takeaway is, you're going to need to work as hard as anything in your life. And I just think we're applying the same principles to business and the physique to the relationship, and going, well, I should seek out understanding, I should seek out knowledge in that. And when the time comes, there's going to be some serious effort that's going to need to go into it. If you want something like anything extraordinary, it's going to require extraordinary.
Absolutely. And then especially those people that are in long-term relationships that go, well, this continually needs to be worked on and improved upon, so.
A great takeaway, I think, there, Brad. And my last one, a bit more lighthearted. I ask all my guests, if you could choose a superpower, you can make one up if you want. What would it be and why?
Fascinating. I think the ability to, be able to just, understand and read where someone's at. Now, I feel like through doing a lot of work at understanding emotional intelligence, when you start speaking to someone, you can start to get some clarity around what's going on. But the ability to just be able to read a thought process and just go, yep, cool. Now, could also be potentially dangerous, but but nonetheless, that would be great, because then we could just, I guess in all sort of human endeavors and relationships, cut through a lot of clutter very quickly. Just go, aha, that's exactly what you're thinking. So I don't have to worry about X, Y, or Z. So
you could just sort of sync right up, and you go, I can put myself in your shoes, empathy, bang. Is this what you mean? Yeah, 100%. I think that's a good one. And my last question that I ask all my guests is, could you identify a fear that you've had in your life? Could be current, could be in the past, what it was, how you overcame it, or if you're still trying to overcome it, and what you've learned from that fear.
Wow, okay. Good
I'll
one.
come back in with the right hook at the end.
We had one actually that myself, Jason, my business partner, and Brad Davis, one of our coaches here at Train HQ, were talking about at breakfast just on Friday. And when I've been training CrossFit now for 8 or so years, and my introduction to CrossFit was like, I'm just going to go and do for a month, sign up and do something different. And I've always been interested in just trying other skill sets and all. Anyway, after a month I was hooked, and I was like, loving it, this is me. And so I've been a avid CrossFitter for many years now. Part of doing CrossFit involves a lot of sort of gymnastic-y stuff. And me as a young kid at school, all the rest of it, I completely avoided any type of gymnastics. I remember having, vault and all that sort of stuff at school, and I would miraculously find ways to avoid it. Now, at that point in time at school, I was going to the gym and doing bodybuilding training. So for me, it was also a bit like, well, I'm trying to build muscle, and this is not cool, and, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, strength training for the win.
Yeah, that's right. And a 15-year-old brain starts to decide that, hey, I'm not going to have a go at this vault. Number one, because I was absolutely petrified of it, absolutely scared, had no skill set, no talent, all the rest of them, going to look like an idiot, So miraculously found ways to engineer myself out of it. So anyway, 20, 30 years later, I find myself at CrossFit, and hello, what do you need to do at CrossFit? We need to do this gymnastic stuff. And I'm like, the 15-year-old Brad comes back and going, how do I magically find my way out of this, But anyway, it was like, all right, tackle it head on. So one of the things was handstand push-ups, right?
Yeah.
I'd never done a handstand push-up, right? So anyways, I thought I'm going to give this thing a crack, So I'm doing kick-ups to the wall, all the rest of it, progressions. And my biggest fear, back to the question, was up in the, upside down, was that I was going to career to the ground. My head was going to hit the ground, and, it was like, do your first one and you're just going to lose control. And that was a fear. Anyway, I'm down with Jason, my business partner, and we're running a workshop. This is 5 or so years ago. We're down in Melbourne, and he's watching me, right? We're in this hotel gym, and I'm kicking up to the wall. I'm doing this practice, and I'm sort of like, I'm really struggling. And he's looking at me and he's going, you're, what you doing? And I said, I'm trying to, get this handstand push-up thing sorted. And he's looking at me and he's looking at my body. He's going, mate, you've got more strength than that. You know what I mean? Like he didn't really understand it. I'm going, well, he goes, what's the fear? I said, well, I feel like I'm just going to create it and crash to the ground, anyway. So he took me through a process. And so the process was going, mate, where's the fear sitting? And we talked through the whole, what he refers to as his blockage busters technique. And it's like, it's sitting in my stomach and what's the concern? And anyway, there's a process that I can't go into right now due to time. But what he taught me through was the concept to go, look, are you prepared just to be able to address the fear, be able to acknowledge it, and then find a way to potentially let it go? And that's sort of, I've summarised a 20-minute process down into
for sure
20 seconds,
Yeah.
Going through that process, I went from not being able to do one to being able to punch out three up and down, and I walked away and I was blown away, and he was like, I thought that was going to happen, But that once again, I go back to being able to address those fears. So for me, that was a big turning point, because I go, even at the age of what I've been then, roughly 40 years old, I still get the privilege of these experiences of learning these new things, new skill sets, and so forth. So yeah, it was pretty profound for me.
For sure. I mean, change your mindset, change your world, right?
Yes.
In many respects, and I think that's it's a very insightful, or should I say, an appropriate way to end what's been an insightful and an inspirational, in my opinion, podcast. And I really appreciate your time. But before we go, for the listeners and the watchers on YouTube, we can see you, who want to learn more about you, about what you do here at Trainer HQ, tell us, where we can find you, the links, all the best resources. You mentioned podcast, books, websites.
Yes.
And of course, I'll put all that in the description below for the listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the best place to start would be to come through and follow us on any of our socials. So first of all, if I start with the website, it's trainer-hq.com. And so from there, that can take you through. But where we're most predominant is we've got a very vibrant Facebook community group. So any people that you have that might be interested in coming, and fitness professionals and people who want to learn about business, that'd be a great place to start. So inside our Trainer HQ Facebook community. And then our YouTube channel does have a significant amount of free content on there for people to digest and to learn, and we've got our podcast as well. So yeah, I guess from our perspective, we just try and make as much content as available for people as possible.
Yeah, no, for sure. And as ever, I will link that down below, and I would urge all of you listening to check it out, whether you're a new trainer to the industry or even if you're in a different part of business, and even the established ones, because there's always more to learn. And I can confirm there's a great knowledge here from the guys. They're doing a phenomenal job, and I'm sure you'll be able to take something positive away. So Brad, thanks for your time, mate. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.
Mate, thank you for hosting as well. This has been luxury. I've now spoilt. And for everyone listening and watching, thank you for your time. Again, we really appreciate it. Make sure if you're on YouTube, like, comment, let us know, what did you like, what do you want to know more of, and of course subscribe, hit that bell icon, and if it's safe to do so, on iTunes, Spotify, or any other media player and you're not driving, leave us a rating and a review, because it helps this channel grow and me and Brad get to help more people along with all of the other guests. And as always, until the next episode, stay fearless.